to our domestic policy. I personally firmly believe, even before I met Tulsi, that there are deep connections between militarism, systemic poverty, systemic racism, and the ecological devastation that's happening today. And so when I heard her speak, I said, she is the one. And I've been volunteering ever since. So I'm super happy to be here with you all tonight to listen to her speak once again before she leaves. And very excited to introduce someone who helps us really analyze the mainstream media and thinking about how media connects us or disconnects us from the truth. And so here we are, Nico House. Thank you so much.
Hello, New Hampshire. It is cold as hell outside. What the hell are y'all doing here? This is crazy. But thank you so much for being here. Give yourselves a hand first for being so engaged in the political process. Seriously, as you've probably guessed by now, it's a little exhausting being this engaged. I'm sure y'all have been going through it since, I don't know, the beginning of the country, but it's really important to stay disengaged, and even more important to go outside of your bubble and learn new things about new candidates regularly. And with that being said, I would like to do something that Tulsi usually does, but with a different question. How many of you here are undecided? Woo, that's a lot of people. What are y'all doing? Y'all should have already made a decision. She back there. But that's okay, I got something for you. How many of you, and I want you to be honest, don't be ashamed. You see how many people here are undecided? How many people in this room right now have been leaning towards Tulsi? You don't tell your friends. You don't tell your family. You don't tell your coworkers. I know you're laughing because I caught you. Look. But I know there's a plethora of reasons why, but one of the reasons why is because you don't know if she actually has a chance to win. How many people are in this crowd today that are undecided because of that? Thank you for being honest. I know there's like 50 more of you, but it's okay. I ain't going to call you out. I'm here today, ladies and gentlemen, to tell you Tulsi Gabbard absolutely has a chance to win. She is absolutely best positioned to beat Donald J. Trump in November. And every lie you've heard is exactly that. It's a lie. I'm not going to lie to you. They'll lie to you. I won't do that. How many people in here take election integrity seriously? Like, that's a serious, wow, oh man. How many of you in here have heard of the Securing America's Elections Act? This side of the room wins. The Securing America's Elections Act is a legislation that was introduced by none other than Tulsi Gabbard that uses a combination of voter-verified paper ballots alongside open-source blockchain software, so even if you did try to rig it, we would be able to catch you and track you. How do you think that sounds on a debate stage next to Donald Trump? It's crazy because, you know, apparently Russia literally stole the world from us in 2016, right? So you would figure election integrity would be a much more important issue. But it's not. But she knows it is. After she gets one delegate here, and she will get her delegate on, you'd be lucky if she don't win first place, so they would. But she's back on that debate stage while the world is watching, where she gets to talk about her Securing America's Elections Act every single time they talk about the problem with absolutely no solution beside it. How many of you are concerned with climate change? Woo, that's what I'm talking about. Y'all don't want global warming? You sure? Y'all been outside? Okay, I was kind of cheering for global warming for a second, but I didn't think I liked global warming until I came to New Hampshire for the first time. How many of you have ever heard of the Off Fossil Fuels Act? Man, you got some educated people in this crowd, okay. The Off Fossil Fuels Act is a piece of legislation, the most aggressive piece of climate change legislation that have ever been introduced, not only in the United States, but around the world. It was endorsed by over 400 climate and environmental organizations. Do you know when Tulsi introduced that legislation? For everyone who has said, climate change can't wait, it can't wait, oh, you hear that 50 times a debate, right? It's the most important issue. So why didn't any of these candidates, who are the majority of them are in the House or in the Senate, why didn't they co-sign the legislation that Tulsi introduced in 2017? why are we seeing this pattern of Tulsi being ahead on every single issue? I know impeachment is a contentious issue. Donald Trump has absolutely done impeachable things. But ladies and gentlemen, he committed a war crime. And guess who was the only one who tried to she said, we need to censor him because he's committing war crimes. Yeah, we're going to worry about this stuff over here, though. But can we at least talk about the war crime? No, we're going to talk about the stuff over here. And while everyone was playing partisan political games, kind of like New Hampshire, Tulsi said, I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to be the adult in the room. And now the Democrats who backed that just took part in a 49% approval rating now after impeachment that Tulsi tried to prevent. That's one of the reasons I think that Tulsi's message resonates so much with people in New Hampshire. Because when everyone says, you better go right, you better go right, you better go right, you showed, even if it's recently as 2016, New Hampshire gonna do what the hell they wanna do. Am I, give yourselves a hand, am I wrong? And I can tell you from personal experience, Tulsi hard-headed like y'all. And she's gonna do what she wants to do, but the thing is, she always wants to do what's best for you. Regardless of whether or not Fox News attacks her, CNN attacks her, MSNBC attacks her, when people don't stand up for her, and listen, y'all have seen Tulsi stands up for everybody and anybody, as long as it's the right thing to do. And the people don't come to her aid, and yet she still continues to do the right thing. Is that not what we want as president? Not somebody who does the right thing because it's popular, but because it's the right thing to do. That's why she's suppressed. That's why they want her off the debate stage, but they're perfectly fine with Bloomberg being on the debate stage, huh? Crazy. Tulsi, you need to get like $1 billion in your account. Maybe we can work something out. But trust me when I say, this is not a zero-sum game, ladies and gentlemen, and the elections are much different than they used to be. New Hampshire has huge implications on the rest of this race. The world is just discovering who Tulsi Gabbard is. And after she gets a delegate, just one, she's back on the debate stage, answering and holding people accountable for everything that I just talked about tonight. And while the world is just learning about Tulsi Gabbard, everybody using all their corporate money to back their campaigns that only got corporate money because they thought that they were viable candidates, well, those corporations are going to trying to figure out, if you're so viable, how come you couldn't beat Tulsi Gabbard in New Hampshire? And they're going to, as Tulsi's trajectory goes up. So you do have a very important choice to make on Tuesday, ladies and gentlemen. You can vote for the candidate you think might win, or you can do what New Hampshire has always done, and you can do what Tulsi Gabbard has always done, and you can make the right decision and be a part of history. And with that being said, I would like to introduce the first millennial who will be president of the United States of America, the first major, not kind of went to the green zone one time while I was in the intelligence community and I know so much about Afghanistan now, and no, I'm talking about actual major. The only member here who had Tulsi, can I say balls? The balls to go to Syria and not say Assad, where you live at so we could bomb you, but instead said, matter of fact, she didn't even talk to Assad first. She went to the people like she's doing right now. And she said, I want to know how to stop your pain. Tulsi did that. She wasn't scared of Assad. Come on, it's Tulsi. Y'all seen her? You see her MMA? You think she's scared of Assad? Assad real buttoned up. I don't think he can handle Tulsi even if he wanted to. She wasn't scared of Putin. She wasn't scared of Hillary. Even when did y'all see that interview with Tulsi? She said, the Clintons don't scare me. And some of you may not even know this, but even Van Jones said, once upon a time before Tulsi stood up to the Democratic Party, she was the anointed one. She was being prepared to be the next, quote unquote, Hillary Clinton, but even more electable than anybody else. And guess what? She gave it all up for you. She ain't scared of nobody. And that's why I support her, and you should too. Ladies and gentlemen, give a hand to Congresswoman and future President of the United States of America, Tulsi Gabbard. Well done. Thank you.
Aloha. The one and only Nico House. There is not another like him. Thank you, Nico, and thank you, Carissa, for your kind introductions and your support. Thank you all for coming out tonight. It's great to be in Concord. This is our second to the last town hall. You've been to a lot of them with me, Karen. AARP force out in force. Thank you guys for being here. Thank you for being everywhere, advocating for people, advocating to stop greed. It's been such an incredible experience throughout this past year as we've had the privilege of being able to travel across New Hampshire, be able to visit big cities, big towns, small towns, and for me to be able to build the kinds of connections and relationships that we've built over this past year. This has been an experience I will never, ever forget, and will forever be grateful for the kindness and the openness and the hospitality that we've received here all across New Hampshire. I am here and I am filled with hope. I am filled with hope for our future because of you, because of all of you. Because in my experience throughout the time we've been here, I've seen people who are thoughtful, people who care for their loved ones, communities, and our country, people who think for themselves and will take action to do the right thing. So however you end up voting on Election Day, I have so much respect for the people of New Hampshire in your taking a stand to do the right thing for our country. I want to say a few additional quick thank yous here. Paula Dill has been the event planner who's helped put this whole thing together here tonight. Please give Paula a round of applause. Is she here? She's probably out working hard somewhere. I want to say thanks to our audio-visual team, Steve Cook, who drove all night from Iowa to get here to help and volunteer his time a couple of nights ago. Road warrior Steve and his partners, Jared Scott and Nathan Raymond, making it possible for us to see and hear each other. You know, the thing that continues to come up, even as we have so many of these conversations and a lot of questions and concerns being raised on different issues, is how do we bridge these divides that are tearing our country apart? How many of you are concerned about this? Yeah, wow. That unless we figure this out, then we're not going to actually be able to solve anything. And unfortunately, we'll continue to see our nation, the nation that we love, being torn apart from within. When Abraham Lincoln issued this warning call about 162 years ago about how a house divided against itself cannot stand, it was at a very, very divisive time in our country's history. And he issued that warning call because he understood the dangers that that divisiveness posed to our nation at such a fragile time. Our nation is in a fragile place today. And when he ended that speech, when he said, "A house divided against itself cannot stand," he ended that speech with a call to action. He said, "We shall not fail." He said, if we stand fast, we shall not fail. Those words, just going back and rereading them again recently, really struck a chord with me. Because as so many of us are deeply concerned and disheartened and even maybe discouraged about how divided our country has become, and wondering, how do we find the light that will take us forward? How do we get to a place where we can start to heal those divides? When Abraham Lincoln said, "We shall not fail," he's talking to us. He's talking to every single one of us. Not just those other guys who are the problem, or not just the people who disagree with me who are clearly the problem. It's us. It's all of us, every single one of us as Americans who have a choice to make. We have a choice to make. Will we take that stand to represent the unity, the values and principles enshrined in our Constitution, the words represented through our Pledge of Allegiance, that we are one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. For all. Not just my team, not just your team, not just people who look like me or who look like you, but liberty, freedom, and justice for all. We're still a long ways away from making sure that this is the reality that is represented in our country. I see that. But these words, these powerful words, light the path forward for us to see, how do we take action in our own lives together to strive for that more perfect union. That's our challenge, and that's our opportunity. And this is essential in Washington to get leaders who will break through the hyper-partisan gridlock, who will check their partisanship at the door and say, you know what, the oath we take after every election, I've been through 4 of them now in Congress. After every election, every member of Congress gathers together on the House floor during that first session where the speaker says, raise your right hand. We all raise our right hand together. And as the oath is recited, we all take that oath, that pledge to support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Every one of us verbally saying, I do. It's not an oath to the Democratic Party or the Republican Party. It is an oath to the Constitution of the United States of America. It's an oath to every single one of you. So as you think about the choice that you have before you on Tuesday, think about what message you want to send to Washington. This is literally the first step towards taking that action to heal these divides, to bring about the kind of leadership that respects every single American, that is inclusive of every American, that you can choose a president who will serve all Americans, not just those of one party or another. That you can choose a president who will invite all Americans to be actively engaged in this democratic republic, to be actively a part of this conversation that we've started throughout this entire campaign, where we can talk about the different issues that we are concerned about most. We can learn about issues that maybe we didn't know anything about, but once we learn more, we say, my gosh, I wasn't aware this is such a problem. Let's do something about this. That we can bring the best of all of our ideas so that we can come up with the best solutions. Get rid of the tired old sound bites. As long as y'all have been doing this, you hear the same things over and over again, I'm sure. Let's come at these problems with creative, fresh solutions that are focused on how we together can best solve problems, serve the people of our country, make sure that this nation is one that we are leaving behind for generations to come with greater freedom, greater liberty, greater justice, greater opportunity for all. So I want to ask you to do me a favor here. We've got about a couple hundred people in the room, and I want us to get to know each other a little better real quick. I know Nico started a little bit, but I want you to raise your hand if you are a Democrat. Awesome. Take a look around. Thank you. Raise your hand if you're Republican. Awesome. Thank you so much for being here. Raise your hand if you're independent or libertarian. Awesome. Thank you so much. I hope you all took a look around the room a little bit as you were doing that, because this diverse gathering that we have here today is one that we have seen reflected in every single one of our town halls all across the state. No matter where we've been, it's what we've seen in our town halls in other states in the country. And this is what gives me hope. This is what gives me hope, because this is a reflection of America right here in this room tonight. And if we can gather here in Concord, New Hampshire, people, Democrats, Republicans, independents, libertarians, coming here all with one goal, one purpose, one concern in mind, and that is the future of this nation, then we can do this as a country. If we can all come together, bringing our diverse ideas, coming in knowing, hey, I'm not going to agree with everything that you might believe in. You're not going to agree with all of the positions that I have, but I guarantee you that as we have our discussion tonight, you'll probably find yourself seeing common ground, maybe more than you realized, because having this dialogue based on respect allows us to break through all of the polarization and the buzzwords, the trigger words, the cancel culture, break through all of that and just relate to each other as people. See each other as our fellow Americans. And that's a powerful thing, and it's a beautiful thing, and it is what gives me hope for our country's future, because these kinds of conversations must continue. They have to continue, whether it's at school or at work or with our family, around the dinner table, or in town halls like this. These are the conversations and gatherings that we need more of in Washington. This is why, as president, immediately after being sworn in, I'll invite leaders from the House and the Senate to the White House to begin a regular conversation, away from the cameras, away from Twitter, away from the pre-written talking points, and just get some real talk going. Talk about what the priorities of the country are. Be able to air our differences based on respect, and challenge the leaders of our country to be the leaders of, by, and for the people that our founders envisioned for us. It's still, for all the years I've been in Congress, I've been there 7 years, this is my 8th year there, it makes headlines every time leaders from Capitol Hill are invited to go to the White House. Like you can almost see the White House when you look down the National Mall, right? From the Capitol. It's not that far, guys. It's not that hard. But it makes headlines because it hardly ever happens. And so often when it happens, and I've seen this and experienced it, so often when it happens, you have, let's say there's a meeting, then there's a press conference, but you see the talking points have usually been written before the meeting even happened, which means there was a predetermined outcome, which means the whole thing was just a show. What I don't understand is how people in Washington think that they can get anything done if they're not even willing to talk to each other, if they're not willing to listen. Any one of your jobs or school or in your family, if you got to figure out a problem, kind of got to talk to each other. Basic requirement. So it comes down to leadership. This is the leadership that I seek to bring. It comes from experience. These aren't just empty words. It comes from experience that I've had throughout my time in Congress. My first 6 years in Congress were spent as a freshman Democrat with a Republican majority in the House. So when you question, okay, Tulsi, that sounds fine, it sounds beautiful, yeah, okay, let's all do this. But when it comes right down to it, how do you actually get shit done? How do you actually pass legislation? That's what it comes down to, right? You want to see stuff happen. Sick and tired of the empty words, you want to see stuff happen. That was what I had to figure out when I first got elected. In 2012, freshman Democrat, Republican majority, with some longtime Washington professionals telling me immediately, don't even try to pass a bill. You're not going to be able to get it done. Just wait for the Democrats to take over, and then you can actually work to get the agenda that your constituents are interested in passed in Congress. Didn't sound like a very good deal to me. So I started thinking, how can I start to build these relationships in such a hyper-partisan environment where you walk in the room and instead of seeing a person, people say, oh, there's a Democrat or there's a Republican. There's someone who I'll work with because they're part of my team, or there's someone who's a part of the quote-unquote opposing team, which means therefore we're going to have to beat that person in the next election. So you're not really going to do very much to try to work with them because it might make it harder to beat them. This is the opening presumption. So I was thinking how to get through that, how to break through that. I started with one of my most favorite universal ways to communicate, universal languages, which is food. Anybody not like food here? Okay, good. You agree. Awesome. My mother makes this incredible macadamia nut toffee. So I called her up. She's in Hawaii. I'm in DC, and said, hi, Mom. How are you? How's the weather? Oh, by the way, I have a question for you. Will you make 434 boxes of your toffee for every single member of Congress? I think that's a great idea. Absolutely. Happy to help. I have one more favor on top of that. Yeah, she's not here, but she deserves a round of applause. You'll see why in a minute. So I asked if she would also make another 435 larger boxes of toffee for the staff of every member of Congress. Exactly. Exactly. And she paused only momentarily as she was thinking, okay, I'm gonna have to go back to Costco, get so many more macadamia nuts. It's gonna take me a little bit longer. But she got to work in Hawaii. She's stirring 2 pots of toffee at the same time. She's chopping the mac nuts. My dad called me up. My parents have been married in December, made 51 years. And short little family story. Their first date is college students at Yosemite. They had summer jobs there. My dad was checking my mom out. She's pretty hot. And he asked her out, and she said, yeah, sure. Do you play tennis? He says, yeah, of course. She said, okay, let's go meet at the tennis courts. So they went. She beat him 6-love, 6-love. And they went out on another date. My dad went on to become a tennis pro eventually. So they're a little competitive. They've been playing tennis still every day for all of the 51 years they've been married. So my dad calls me up, not to be outdone by my mother, and says, Tulsi, I really want you to know that I'm helping your mom with this. I'm taking a piece out of every pan that she pours to make sure that the quality is good enough for members of Congress. Good job, Dad. So as they're doing this in Hawaii, I'm writing handwritten notes to every one of my soon-to-be new friends and colleagues in Congress, just introducing myself and signing every note saying, I look forward to serving with you. Started to deliver these little gifts of aloha, and very quickly I started getting responses. That during votes on the House floor, the only time that we're all in that same shared space together, members of Congress, chairmen of powerful committees, people from the other party, people from other parts of the country who I normally probably wouldn't cross paths with, who probably, wouldn't give me the time of day or return my call if I called and asked for a meeting right away. They were coming and looking for me on the House floor. Where's this new member of Congress from Hawaii? He said, I ate all the candy. I need more before I can go home this weekend. Can you hook me up? And then most importantly, just asking, hey, tell me what's going on in your district. Tell me what your constituents are most concerned about. What do you want to work on? Let's work together. I'm on this committee, or this is what I do, or this has been my focus. Let's work together. It was such an incredible thing to see how this simple, small gesture of reaching out with respect, without preconditions, without prejudgments, without picking and choosing, like, hey, I've seen this guy on TV and I think what he says is horrible, so I'm going to take him off the toffee list. No. Reaching out to everybody, understanding that even those who I disagree with on 9.8 out of 10 things, there's that little bit of space where we can find common ground when we stand together focused on that singular mission that every leader in Washington must have, which is serving our country, serving the people of our country. So you might think this sounds a little simplistic, but this is real because we're talking about real people. And it's a representation of how we heal these divides in our country. We just treat each other with respect and just reach out. It's possible your hand might get slapped away. It's possible someone might turn their back on you. It's okay, maybe they're just not ready yet. Keep reaching out with what we call aloha. Keep reaching out with respect. And you will be surprised and inspired by the responses you will get. It's because of these foundational relationships I was able to build based on respect. I was able to pass my very first bill that I introduced in Congress into law under Republican majority and signed ultimately by President Obama. It's because of these relationships that I was able to get amendments on the House floor for votes. Things that my staff said, boss, they've been trying to do this for years and it's failed because Republicans are in charge. I said, hey, we gotta try. It's because of these relationships that I got my phone calls returned. It's because of these relationships that even when their party told them to vote against my bill, they still were willing to hear me out and give me a fair shot based on the substance of the legislation I was putting forward. Sometimes disagreeing, but many other times finding that common ground of agreement. It is this experience that I'll bring to the presidency, treating every American with respect and restoring these soldiers' values to the White House of respect and honor, integrity, and service. So I want to open it up for questions here in a moment. Most importantly, I want you to know that we have some of the macadamia nut toffee here for everybody. I feel like either Oprah or Ellen. Toffee for you, toffee for you, toffee for you. They're going to start passing it out, and we'll get some microphones coming around. Why don't you guys maybe walk up? Oh, yeah, here you go. You'll figure it out. All right, cool. Make sure you grab one. I think we've got enough. Well, I know we have enough for everyone. You can taste a little bit of mom's magic there. Awesome. Okay, we've got the microphones in the middle. Yes. Hi.
I want to say also thank you for your service. I really appreciate that.
Thank you. What's your name?
Katie.
Thank you.
So my brother served in Afghanistan after 9/11 as well. So thank you.
He's
I
home.
appreciate that. He's home. He's
Okay,
alive.
good.
Thank goodness. So
Good.
With a Purple Heart. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. I wanted to ask you, as one of the females running for president, when in office, what you would do to address the epidemic with regards to domestic violence. Over the past 18 years, more women have been killed in the United States alone of America on this soil than the 6,700 fallen heroes in Iraq and Afghanistan and 9/11 put together. Literally 3 women a day are murdered in America from domestic violence. the #1 cause of homelessness in America is domestic violence. It is not mental illness, it is not drug addiction, it is domestic violence. My question is as the first female candidate, what would you do when you get into office, one, to start to redistribute, so there's $500 million a year that's given to the Violence Against Women Act. So as a survivor myself, and I'm going through the system right now, what would you guys do to actually solve the housing problem? Because right now it only gives women literally like 30 to 90 days to take care of their kids, find a new job, save enough money for first, last month's rent, and then get into a place. What would you do to redistribute that? Because if I did real estate for 10 years. $500 million is a lot of money. That's enough money to buy enough real estate to house every domestic violence survivor and their children alone at this moment for 2 years and educate them so they could get back to their lives and they don't have to go back to their abusers. So my question would be, what would you do to involve survivors in the conversation and as well to start to address the epidemic with this, because it's a real one.
Yeah. Before you take the mic back, I'd like to just ask you, if you don't mind, since this is something that you have gone through, you have been through yourself and seen firsthand, and you've probably made connections with other people who've gone through the same thing again. What are you seeing about maybe the top glaring holes or misuse of those dollars that you think could be better used?
Thank you. That's a good question. I think so. The first thing that I would address would be, instead of funding $30 million for software systems at the police department, that $30 million should go to survivors with regards to housing to triage them and get them into long-term housing. So one of the reasons it takes a survivor 7 times to leave. One of the reasons that survivors go back, though, is because they're making a choice between either getting beat or being homeless, which are both very dangerous situations. So if we could reallocate some of the funding, or, we're doing a lot of prevention programs, which I'm for, 100%, because it's a social and cultural thing that we need to teach the youth about, because that will change behaviors and attitudes. But if we can't we can't get make the bleeding stop first, and that's meaning current survivors. So let's get them housed. And I would say, so taking some of the funding that's going to like more research and special interest projects and actually using that to buy housing. So if you bought housing and you had more transitional housing, you could put people in that and then give them 2 years to go back to school to become a licensed nurse practitioner or get a certificate to become an x-ray tech, because then these women who have children will have enough money to economically take care of their kids, afford their own place, and then you can get them out of the system, because that actually gives them enough time to do that. So I'd say that's one aspect. The other aspect I would address is working with police departments. So one of the things that they found, that there's 22 indicators that make a domestic violence survivor a very high risk to become domestic homicide. So we know that one of them is strangulation. Strangulation does not leave any actual physical marks. It leaves no bruises, but it causes actual brain damage. So another thing that I would love to see the federal government do is maybe put a bill in place that would say every police department around the United States, when responding to a domestic violence call, could ask a basic question. What did your husband strangle you? Because there's not going to be bruises. And if that is a yes, when did it happen? If it happened within the last 48 hours, that person goes to the hospital and has an actual CAT scan, because then that will rule out if they have a traumatic brain injury or not. Because 1 in 4 domestic violence survivors, I am one of them, has had a traumatic brain injury that went untreated because of this problem. It is also a fact that if your husband has strangled you, you are much more likely, or you're a much higher risk to actually die from domestic homicide. So as well, to be able to address that and make sure that this person gets into safe housing and does not end up back with their abuser because their situation wasn't taken seriously because the cops didn't see marks all over their neck. So those are some of the topics, just a tip of the iceberg that I would start to address.
Yeah. Perfect.
Thank
you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for being willing to be so open and to share both your own experience as well as your thoughts through that experience on how we can better improve this terribly tragic statistic in this country. This is the approach that I will take as president. I'm not going to stand here and pretend to tell you that I know everything about every single issue that we face, but I also know that it's important that leaders in Washington, policymakers, members of my cabinet, best make those informed decisions about policies based on on-the-ground, real-time information coming from those who are most impacted in every single part of our government. The things that you're putting forward make sense, and I've spent some time visiting domestic violence shelters in my own home state of Hawaii, have had a chance to sit down and talk with women who are survivors like yourselves, many of them with very young children, and questioning to themselves, what are they going to do when they have to leave the shelter? And talking about how there are so many more women who have no place to go because there aren't enough shelters. There aren't enough beds, especially those who are willing to take children for long term. And talking about my home state, for example, and there's so many things that are linked to this. You mentioned affordable housing, really, truly affordable housing, that a single mom who now has no finances, no income, oftentimes no credit on her own, is supposed to be able to then go in, high cost of living, it costs maybe $1,500 for a super, super cheap studio in my home state of Hawaii, a month. $1,500 a month. What to speak of, you've got a few kids, most landlords aren't going to let you bring 4 kids into a little studio apartment. But thinking through all of these things, all of the costs and needs, you see how deep the problem runs. So then let's go to, okay, what's the solution? The federal government, the Violence Against Women's Act, provides this funding that you're talking about. But here's the issue, before we even get to the point of reapportioning that to make sure that it's most effectively helping those who need help, and reducing the numbers of women who are unfortunately losing their lives because they feel they have no option. The Violence Against Women